Now, there are still significant delays in the Irish Passport Office. The EU Digital COVID Certificate scheme has been extended, and Spain has instituted a 6-drink cap at all-inclusive resorts in some areas. I'm joined by Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning to you, Pat.
Now, let's talk about the Passport Office first of all. I mean, it is a busy time of the year, but now busier than ever, it would appear.
Yeah, we had a developing problem here since December. And when you consider the number of applications that goes in every year for Irish passports, without the difficulties we've had over the last 3 years, May was always going to be the crisis month. It's the month that gets the most applications. April gets the second most, and then June the third. When it's very, very quiet, November, December, the passport applications are much lower. Now, a couple of things have accelerated that. One of them is that we haven't been travelling in the numbers for the last 3 years. So a lot of people are finding expired passports. That's not as big a problem if you can still apply online. All the problems seem to be arising if you have to seek a passport, go through the legal process, and you can't do that if your passport has expired by more than 5 years. So a lot of problems. First of all, the number of applications, and second of all, the knock-on from COVID.
People who've allowed their passport to expire by 5 years, though, they're not kind of frequent travellers because, the 2 years of inhibition from COVID and not having travelled 3 years before that. So, they're not the kind of people who are causing the problem, I would suspect.
You'd be surprised. With people ready for their 3-year holiday in 2020, just let it all roll. A big problem arises with family members. There was one of the things that has helped is that a child's passport is now a 5-year passport, not a 3-year. And there's a big problem with newborn babies. Very important, you don't have to wait for your PPS number for your newborn child to initiate the application, but it is much slower than it was pre-COVID. So apply for the passport for the newborn baby. Once it's online, things seem to be working. Another problem, Pat, that has emerged is that people who thought they would have it all rolling through in time, they found that once they had put the ordinary application in, they couldn't get into the emergency system. And another important issue arose with support documents. If you're applying for a newborn baby, the parents' passports are sent in, and they were not coming back at the speed that people needed to travel. Lots of a confluence of different problems, and there doesn't seem to be a very immediate solution to them, Pat.
Now, Brexit still has an effect because we see in Northern Ireland in 2020, more people applied for a Republic of Ireland passport, an Irish passport in other words, than a UK passport for the first time ever.
Yeah, it was getting closer and closer anyway with the demographics of Northern Ireland. I suspect that we probably won't see that going back. But certainly the Irish passport gets you into almost more or less the same number of countries visa-free as the British one, around 187. There isn't that tremendous difference, but a lot of Northern Ireland people in particular are finding it very convenient to have two of them.
Yeah, and you can travel on both passports. You can take your pick. You can look at the line, the queue, as you emerge from your aircraft and head towards passport control. And if the UK queue is shorter, you whip out your UK passport. If the EU queue is shorter, you whip out your EU passport, your Irish one.
I can assure you, Pat, the UK queue is never shorter. Europe, you travel a lot frequently to Faro. We've seen the huge queues for the non-EU passports there because obviously a huge volume of British people going down. Having the Irish passport, certainly travel within the European Union, is a big advantage. And it turns up in countries you wouldn't expect. Some countries require UK visitors to have a visa. Irish visitors do not. I'm in South Africa at the moment, one of the neighbouring countries here. Zambia would be an example of that. But there are examples throughout the world.
Now, the COVID cert scheme is to be extended, which means that it can still be applied by countries that choose to do so. It doesn't mean, though, that even though the scheme has been extended, that your existing COVID cert will still apply, because that is still likely to expire a certain number of months after your latest shot.
It's very interesting that was a big worry, because there was a 9-month time limit put on it in January. But what we've seen happening through Europe is locator forms being dropped by countries and restrictions being dropped by countries. To give an example, in the last week, Greece, Malta, Lithuania, Bulgaria and Switzerland all lifted all travel restrictions for people arriving within the European Union. In Spain, they have extended the requirement for the COVID cert. They're quite cautious. Tourism is very important to them, but it doesn't make any difference to the situation that applied last week. They've dropped the locator form into Spain, and both Spain and Portugal. And once you have your EU digital COVID cert, you do not require to fill out the locator form, and there are no restrictions. Masking went in Spain on April the 20th. I'm instancing Spain because it's by far our biggest tourist destination, but there are only a few small number of countries within Europe still have the requirement of a locator form. Italy would be an example, France would be an example, Belgium and Netherlands. And a really important thing, I've flagged it before, but you cannot flag it often enough. If you're Googling locator form for Italy, the first search result will try to charge you for it, because the intermediary, the guys who fill out the form for you and charge you €55 for the honour, finish higher in a Google search than the official government site. Locator forms, still a few countries have them, but make sure you never pay for them. All of them are free.
All of them are free. Spain has instituted a 6-drink ban on alcohol in certain areas. Which areas, and how in God's name would that be policed?
Right. The Balearic Islands introduced this quite a while ago, and it's really only as tourism has returned that we've seen a sort of a great deal of publicity, particularly in English media over the last week. What they wanted to do was to cut down on disorder. It's nothing to do with price. It's all about disorder. They wanted this, the pub crawl, where large group of people go get a few drinks in each of several pubs and go through the town. And it's specific to the Balearic Islands, places like Magaluf and to a lesser extent Santa Ponsa. The big Irish resort would have a name for very drinks, alcohol-centric tourism. Balearic Islands also were very suggested that they should be a 3-drink limit at lunch and a 3-drink limit at dinner. That's effectively 6 drinks a day in all-inclusive resorts, which raised the big question of when is an all-inclusive resort not an all-inclusive resort. They do have the power to do that, and it's really interesting that the all-inclusive resorts are quite controversial. There are countries like Dominican Republic that use them a lot, but they have a reputation for keeping the tourist in the complex and not allowing them out to not encouraging people to go out to local restaurants and bars and all of that. I know it's a big debate in places like Mauritius, but the Balearic Islands, they've never really been that fond of the all-inclusive resort, but certainly it does raise that question. 6 will do per day, and if you need more, you have to pay for it yourself.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't mean you can't drink more, it's just you won't get it free in the resort of your choice. I presume they just give them 3 vouchers for lunch and 3 vouchers for dinner, and each one gets a drink. But it doesn't stop you buying your own either there or elsewhere.
There are other ways that people do it. They they don't have the free drink as strong. An awful lot of cruise lines, for instance, have an alcohol package, and then if you want premium stuff, you can pay extra for it. And the general trend has been that the people that went away to all-inclusive resorts just to booze up, there are fewer of them, fewer resorts in that business. They tend to bring you in as sort of a few free drinks as an incentive, and then hope that you buy the premium stuff.
All right, Eoghan, thank you very much for joining us from South Africa. Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine.